Sew these beautiful reversible face masks in 3 different sizes, adult, youth, and child, all with Face Mask Ruler by June Tailor. It's very easy to use. You're going to start with a 6-inch square with 4 of our fabrics. So we have 2 coordinating fabrics, and they're basically right sides together for the blue and right sides together for the gray. You want to layer them all, stack them neatly on top of each other. Put your face mask ruler over the top, and if I'm making a size large, I want the corner of the ruler to be right at the corner of the square. And now we're going to mark all the way around the edge here and here. If I'm making a medium size, shift the ruler down so that the large dotted line shows up at the edge of the square and across the bottom. If I'm making a small mask for a child, I use the dotted line with the dot. Again, lining it up on the side and across the bottom. Trace around it and cut out all 4 pieces. When the 4 pieces are cut out, we're going to sew right sides together our gray and right sides together our light blue. And we're going to sew 1/4 inch on this rounded edge, as you see here, and 1/4 inch on this rounded edge here. When we're done with that, we're actually going to trim our seam allowances. So you're going to make a little notch from the outside edge of the seam allowance right up to the seam line, but not through it. So don't cut too steeply in here, but just enough so that when we press this, it's going to lay nice and flat. So you want to make a couple of notches, probably about every 1/2 inch through here. And then when you're done, you're going to press that seam allowance toward one side. Now we're going to put right sides together, like you see here. And notice that our seam allowances are pressed to one side. So on the gray, they're pressed toward the right, and on the light blue, they're pressed toward the left. That avoids getting any bulk at that seam line. So right sides together and stitch in 1/4 inch on each side. So down here and on the other side, down here, 1/4 inch. Referring to the ruler, we're now going to cut the elastic. I'm making the large size, so I'm going to cut between 7 and 8 inches. And I'm going to cut exactly at 7.5 because my head's pretty average and face is pretty average, so we'll just cut 7.5. And then you're going to take your elastic and you're going to run it right next to the seam line. So I'm going to pull the elastic all the way through like this, and I'm simply going to line that up right next to the seam line. Now I have left a little elastic sticking out over the top here, as you can see, but I want to make sure that I get it caught in my seam line. So I'm going to be stitching all the way around this top edge over here, and then I will insert my second piece of elastic up through here as well and continue on. I've got that done here, so now you can see that my elastic is sewn in across the top, and I've sewn all the way around the top edge. Notice that my seam allowances are pointing to the left on the gray side and on the right on the light blue side, so there's no bulk at the seam allowance. I continued sewing along here, and I encased that other piece of elastic. And then I also made some little trim lines, some notches in that curved seam so that it's going to press open nice and flat. The next step we're going to do is we're going to push the elastic up into the face mask and sew the bottom. So in order to do that, you just want to keep your elastic straight like this as you push it up, like this. And then we're going to sew the bottom edge of our mask, and we're going to sew in 1/4 inch and make sure you encase this piece of elastic. Go all the way across here. And again, do the same on this side, pushing the elastic up. But here you want to leave an opening of a couple of inches so that we can turn right sides out. My sewing is complete around the mask. Now I'm going to find that area that I left open, and I'm going to turn right sides out. If you have a point presser, now would be a great time to use it so that you can actually get those seam lines nice and opened up. And then you can go ahead, after you've got everything pulled out, you can go ahead and press this. And then we're going to want to turn this open area under 1/4 of an inch, and we're going to be encompassing that seam when we do the outer seam line like we have here. So this last sewing line along here closes the opening and kind of decorates the front of our face mask a little bit. So now we've got everything pressed, and again, these are reversible and they come in 3 different sizes. This is the large, and this one is the small for a child, and this one is kind of the medium for a youth or even for a small adult. So they're lots of fun to make and super easy to make with the June Tailor face mask ruler.